Okay, Waybar isn't complicated. Configuring this utility over here is not very complicated, if complicated at all, right? You can configure it to do all sorts of cool stuff, like update whenever you choose a particular theme in a theme switcher, as I've created over here, okay? We can get the Waybar to do lots of cool stuff. It's actually very, very simple. Now in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how you can do that. I see too many other YouTubers out here. I see too many other YouTube videos complicating Waybar so much to the point where it's some obscure internet utility, okay, created by some obscure developer that nobody knows about that you basically can't use unless you're a genius. That's not the case. Okay, so it doesn't matter even if you're a beginner, an intermediate, an advanced user, it doesn't matter what your level of experience in Hyprland or Linux or Waybar development is. I'm going to show you how you can make bars similar to this, okay, in a fraction of the time that they take to teach you. Now, without further ado, let's actually just get started. So first thing you have to do is, of course, go over to Waybar's wiki, which is this website. So you can just look up Waybar wiki and then click on the first link that you find. Once you do that, you will be brought to the wiki, of course. Okay, then what you want to do, okay, is kill the bar that you have already running so we can create a new config. Let's go to config and then we'll copy this Waybar config over. So Waybar, we'll move that into waybar.back. We'll create a backup of it. Now we're free to dabble around in Waybar as many times as we'd like. Great. Now, first thing we have to do is, of course, get a config.jsonc file and then a style.css file. But before we actually do that, there's a little bit of planning that we have to do. So we have to decide what modules we're actually going to include in our Waybar and whether we're going for a minimalist look or a maximalist look. Because trust me, there are two looks. Okay, so under the minimalist, okay, look or regime, if you wanted to use that terminology, right? Under the minimalist regime, we have a couple of different modules that we can pick. Let's say we might need the volume and then the network and then the battery if you're on a laptop. Okay, then what else could we need? Workspaces, and then a clock. That's pretty much it. That is all you need in order to survive if you're a minimalist. Now, you can be in between a full-on minimalist and a full-on maximalist, okay? That's usually where I am, because in my personal setup, okay, I also have a weather module, which you don't see often, but it is there, along with a Pac-Man module, and probably another module like media, right? Now that is for the minimalist regime. These are all the modules that we're going to be using if we're a minimalist user. However, if you preferred maximalism, which is basically displaying lots of information at once, taking in all the information, okay, keeping a pulse on the way your system is operating, even without having to look up htop or anything like that, okay, if that's what you prefer, then of course we can just type in maximalist over here, and then we could put in every Waybar module under the sun, of course. We'd have the same modules over here, same basic core modules. So we'd paste that in over here. Then after that, of course, we'd have weather, Pac-Man, and media as well. Put that in over here. We might also have more modules like CPU and then RAM and also our disk space. And then let's see what else we could add. Basically, these are the modules that you're going to have in a maximalist setup, in a maximalist Waybar setup. Now, what we're going to be doing is going for a combination of the two, okay? The mini maximalist, as I'd like to call it, where we take elements from both of these and then we put them in there. So depending on whether you want to keep a pulse on your system the entire time that you're using it, or you just want to get on with your work and not give a crap about how the system's actually functioning in terms of CPU and RAM and whatnot, you can pick and choose, right? But I'm going to choose this list of modules so I can show you how to configure most modules that people might want. Great. Now, with that said, let's just shift this to another workspace. We'll keep this here. And first thing we have to do is, of course, create a Waybar config. So we're creating a directory in config Waybar, okay, then cding into there, cd into there. Now, what we want to do is create two files, which would be config.jsonc and style.css. Now, touch is a command that you can use on Linux in order to create new files, basically. So let's say you had to create empty files. Instead of opening a file manager like Thunar and then right-clicking and then creating an empty document, you could just use touch, because that's most likely what it's using under the hood as well. We're just skipping out the middleman of using a file manager. Great. Now you click on configuration. Then once you click on that, you want to scroll down until you see an example config. somewhere over here. Okay, minimal config. So this is basically all that we need in order to get started with configuring Waybar. So paste that minimal config in over here, and then do the same for style.css. Now, if you go back, you should see styling as an option. So click on that. And once you do, there should be another example style.css file over here, minimal style, right? So copy that and then paste it here. Once you paste it, okay, you're probably going to want to open it in a different text editor because you can use NeoVim in order to edit this stuff, but then if you haven't configured tab spacing properly, it's another pain in the neck. So instead of having too many pains in the neck, as I'm pretty sure you already do by craning your neck forward so much, okay, you can reduce your neck pain by opening VS Code or your favorite text editor, GUI text editor, and then just editing over there. Okay, so I've opened the Waybar folder over here, and this is what we're working with, right? We have all of these settings. Great. Now there's a couple of things that we have to do. Let's work through these modules in order. So main thing that we're going to require is the clock and workspaces, and then we can deal with the rest. Okay, so let's get that up and running first. Let's write the changes. And before that, we have to create a new folder, call it scripts, because we're going to have to create a launch script in order to launch Waybar, so that when we press super key and R, it reloads our bar, and so we don't have to kill all -9 Waybar every single time in the terminal. So here you want to create a launch.sh, and once you do that, you just have to type in shebang bin bash, okay? And by the way, if you want to know how to make scripts like these for launching Waybar and basically customizing Waybar to be like you saw, okay, Waybar is pretty dead right now, but regardless, if you want to know how to make theme switches like that and a hell of a lot more, then go ahead and click the first link in the description. I show you exactly how to do it, how to write scripts like these, and how to write Waybar configs like the ones that you saw earlier from scratch. I also teach you how to make, hold on, great. So basically what happens right now is we're in a submap and we can't seem to escape the submap. So let's see what our options are. This is live troubleshooting for you. I'm not cutting this part out because sometimes what happens is on Hyprland, you enter a submap and then you're unable to escape it, as what's happened right now. So let's figure out a way. Great. So it just so turns out that the best way to deal with getting into a submap which you can't seem to escape is not to enter the submap in the first place. Now what I had to do was log out and log back in, which means that we lost the script, as in the script, the little document we created earlier, but that's fine, that's no problem. I'll still show you how you can make this yourself. Great. Now let's actually open a browser, get back to the wiki. Here we are. Great. Now getting back to this script. So what you want to do, type in bin bash. So you're basically just telling the shell in order to use the bash interpreter to execute the rest of this script. Here what you want to do is just type in kill all -9 Waybar. So basically kill Waybar entirely and then launch Waybar again. Waybar ampersand. So once you do that, you should be able to press the super key and R and reload Waybar. Now, of course, that won't work unless you actually make the script executable. So do that. Scripts launch.sh. You want to change mode. Once that's done, it should work. And this is what we see over here. So we have only 2 modules and it looks pretty crap right now, but that doesn't matter because we're going to style it. Great. Now, let's see. We already have clock, then battery, then volume and network. So for volume, we're going to be using pulse audio, right? So let's look for pulse audio. Find it here, click. Once you find pulse audio, you want to scroll down until you find pulse audio over here. So you want to copy this example config, then paste it over here. Okay, paste the example config. Of course, now that you're in VS Code, you can just Control-Shift-I to format, and that does the job for you. Then you want to go to modules, right? And then add in this over here, pulse audio. Okay, add in pulse audio, put in a comma at the end, and there you go. It works to an extent, right? Let's get all the modules in first and then focus on styling it, because last thing we want to do is task switching, because our brains are really efficient at finishing one task and then moving on to the next. If you have to do task 1 and then switch to task 2 and then go back to doing task 1, it's such a waste of productivity and efficiency and time and basically everything. Okay, last thing you want to do on planet Earth is switch between 2 tasks at the same time. So we'll finish our config and then we'll go over to our style.css. Now we've got battery, we've got pulse audio, we've got clock, right? We've got these three. Next thing we need is network. You click on network, scroll down and make sure you get network over here. And you paste. The reason why Waybar is so simple is because one, you only have to understand the modules that you want, okay? And then once you finish that, all you have to do is just copy over whatever example config they've given inside of the wiki, and then you just have to build off of that. If that's the case, then pretty much everybody can configure Waybar, which is the whole point. Waybar is simple and everyone can write it. But it still takes effort in order to make sure that you write Waybar well, which is why I have put together the program that I mentioned earlier called Hyper Accelerator. That's where I show you exactly how you can make custom theme switches like this one, along with Overwatch panels like this one, and logout menus like this one, along with lock screens just like this. And all of them, of course, adapt to whichever theme that you choose. So let's say you want to drum up a custom theme and then you want to install that and use that over here, you could. Let's say you wanted a theme that was a combination of Capuchin and Grapbox and Nord Docker. Well, you wouldn't be able to do that if you were using something like Matugen, okay? But if you were using your own theme switcher with your own themes, all you had to do was just replace the files, okay? Replace the files and the symlinks with your own, and then basically you'd be done. You wouldn't have to depend on any external tool in order to do the theming for you, which is one of the best and most liberating parts of using a theme switcher. But in the program, of course, I also cover how you can use wallpaper-based theme switchers like Matugen and Wallust and Pywall and pretty much every solution you can think of. So trust me, that program has everything you could possibly need. So if you want to save time and not waste any time on your icing journey, because trust me, it takes quite a long damn time. This thing took me months to make, believe it or not. If you just want to get to the good stuff without all the bad stuff, okay, just go ahead, click the first link in the description. However, if you do want to waste time, if you have too much time to waste and burn watching stupid countless YouTube tutorials that don't actually teach you anything, then of course you can go ahead and do that and not check out the first link in the description. I would be honored just the same. Great, now the rant's done. You want to change the network interface to WLO1 or whatever your network interface is. The way to get to know that is to type in IP-C space A over here, and you should see WLO1 over here if you're using wireless. If you are not using wireless, then of course you have to substitute in WLP1S0 as it was here previously, or you have to type in ENO1 or whatever your Ethernet interface name is. Put that in over here, and then if I type network, it should show me the network I'm connected to. And indeed it does. So let's take the clock, let's move it to the center, because for this Waybar config, we're going to make it like a dock. We're going to make it a dock that's at the bottom of the screen. So clock in the center seems to be pretty good decision and a wise decision for that. Okay. Now for left workspaces, we need Hyprland /workspaces. So you want to look for Hyprland over here, click on Hyprland. Once you do, scroll down to the example config. So the example that we want is this persistent workspaces example, because there are two types of workspace modules, right? You either have the persistent workspaces one, which basically allows you to choose the number of workspaces that are displayed by default, okay? Or you have the normal one, which is basically going to show you the current workspace you're on and any workspaces in which there are active windows or open windows. If, however, you don't want that and you want the kind of config that you saw earlier in the video, all you have to do is just come over here and then paste this config for persistent workspaces. Put that in, and then you should be able to just go ahead and then do so. Do this, and then you should be able to get Hyprland workspaces just fine. Now the styles are a bit broken. We can copy those and fix those later, and we will. But for now, let's get the modules working. Right here, format icons. This array is not going to be used by us because we're only using the workspace name, which is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 anyway, so it won't matter. And here is where you can change the number of persistent workspaces. So here it says 5 workspaces by default on every monitor, and if you wanted to configure it per monitor, you can change it over here. Find out your monitor by typing in hyperctl monitors, get to know the monitor that you have, and then configure it accordingly. I have only one monitor, so I'm just going to keep this line and then get rid of the comment. Great. Now, after that, what else do we have? So we have all of these modules, and then the three that we were separating apart from the common modules, were Pacman, weather, and media. So those we can set up later, probably in a different video, because this video is only aimed at showing you the basics of how to configure Waybar in extremely less time. So we'll just stick to the basics, the basic 5 modules that we saw earlier, okay? So we have Hyprland workspaces, 1, 2, 3, 4. Great. We should probably have one more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, it's fine. We have all of it. Clock too, right? Great. Then we'll just delete all of the configs that we don't actually need from here. Awesome. And that's pretty much it as for our config.jsonc. Now, the most fun part about writing Waybar is, of course, the aesthetics itself. So here's what we're going to do. We'll keep the layer as top because we want it to be a top layer. However, if you have any pop-up menu and then you want Waybar to display below that pop-up menu, just change layer to bottom and then you'll be fine. Then you want to change position to bottom because this is going to be a dock style bar. Okay, then you want to add in margin bottom, and then here we can add an integer, something like 10. Now you can match this up. You can match this up with the gaps that you have around your windows in Hyprland. So if I show you what those gaps are, then config hyper modules binds dot, not binds, but decorations. Oh, and if you're wondering what this modules folder is about, I cover it in detail in modularity section in my program, which is the first link in the description. So if you want, you can just go ahead and check that out. Here in decoration.conf, if we, okay, should see gaps somewhere over here. If we don't see gaps, it's probably going to be inside of here, decorations default. It's most likely this one. You can check which one by going to config hyper modules decorations. Okay, it's showcase 2 that I'm using. So let's open that one. And here, gaps in is 10 and gaps out is 20. So pretty simple. All you have to do is just make sure that the same level of gaps are being used. Let's say it's 20. Yep. And as you can see, there is an equal level of gap between the bottom of the screen and then between this window border over here, these two window borders. So it's kind of like this is working as another dock, effectively. Now we can actually turn this into a dock by reducing the width, but we'll get to it eventually, right? In fact, let's just do it now. We'll add in width and then we'll make it something like, so this is 1920 by 1080. So we can make it something like 1000 pixels. If we change width to 1000, what will happen is it'll shrink. It will shrink and give us this dock-like appearance, which is awesome, which is what we want. Great. Now, let's see what else we can do. So as for the style, we have to remove a lot of stuff. So let's get rid of this border bottom. But for every single element, you want to make sure margin is 0, padding is 0, and min height, for Christ's sakes, you have to make sure that min height is 0. So these 3 are almost mandatory whenever you're configuring, okay, these things are almost obligatory whenever you are okay, not obligatory, we can probably pick a different word for it, but you get the idea, right? These are pretty much necessary because if you don't have these, what happens is every element tends to occupy a different margin, or rather occupy a different amount of space than you actually want it to. So one issue that you might be facing if you were creating Waybar configs before is that these modules that you're seeing over here, these workspace buttons, they seem to get a little bit too big. Okay, they have too big of an ego, and so what happens is that the buttons end up blowing up, and then no matter what you try to do, no matter what margin technique, what padding technique you use to try and squish them down, they just never get squished down. And the reason is because you're basically not adding in these settings over here for every single element. What you want to do is make sure that every element, okay, that's the asterisk, that's what that means. So every single element that you see over here is going to have no margin, no padding, and no minimum height unless explicitly declared. And that makes the bar so much easier to deal with. You won't be able to understand now, but trust me, do it and then you'll notice the difference. So as for border radius, we can actually add in something like 10, but we don't need that. Again, we'll be doing that per element, so that's fine. So font family, we can change it to something like SF Pro Display if you're feeling a bit professional. However, if you're feeling a bit monospacey or tech vibe Cody, whatever, you can just put in JetBrains Mono proper. Nerd font proper. So that's what I'm going to put over here. JetBrains Mono Nerd Font proper. And look, the reason why you want to add proper after JetBrains Mono Nerd Font is because this is the proportional variant of a font. Now, I've covered this in detail in another video, so if you want to know the reason why I put in proper at the end of this font file, font name, you can go ahead and check that video out. But trust me, it makes dealing with icons much, much easier. As you saw immediately, as soon as I added in the right font, the bar started behaving properly and then didn't start acting up. So that's one of the reasons why. But anyway, let's go over to get rid of all of this mode stuff. We don't need any of the keyframes. We don't need the mode. Okay? Don't need the mode, don't need the battery. Great. Then here, we also don't need any of this stuff. Now if we reload, this is what happens. Good, we want that to happen. And now the process of styling begins. Now the quickest way to style it is to take a look at the wiki, of course, and look at what style options we have. So if we look here, should be able to find it. Yep. Let's see, that's for Waybar itself. Okay, this is, yeah. So workspaces button, button active, empty, persistent, special, visible. We have lots of these settings. So what we're going to configure is, first of all, the workspaces module itself. Now, our best bet is most likely going to be to make the background of Waybar transparent. So we'll just add in transparent like so that we're able to get this island style bar here. And then after that, let's see what else we got. Color, we can change that to any color that we want. Maybe we can just keep it white. Doesn't really matter what color we choose. It's most probably going to be determined by our background. Now, for the workspaces, let's go and change the padding. You know what? Let's increase font size and then do that. So, font size is going to be something like 16 pixels or 1 rem. 16 pixels is readable. That's great. Now, let's see what happens if we try and do this. Background, we can give it a background something like, okay, we'll make it black for now, and then we can add in the details and colors later on. So that would be something like 121212, which is material black, Google's material design black. Okay, looks pretty nice, right? So we have round buttons. That's awesome. Now, what about the selected workspace? So let's add that in. Workspaces button dot active. We can change the min width. Okay. Now this is actually how you're supposed to edit the width of every single element inside of this Waybar, right? We're supposed to use min width. So if you change min width to something like 50 pixels, as you can see, immediately the minimum width changes and we have really cool transitions and stuff. And also, not to mention, we can add in transitions for workspaces. So that would look a little something like this, right? Workspaces, and then we can add in transition. And I have to look up transition CSS to get the basic idea of what transitions are supposed to look like. If we just copy that over, should be pretty simple. Okay, so transition all, right? Transition all, so we want to apply it to every single element. 0.5 seconds, let's say we want it to be 250 ms, 250 milliseconds, ease in, out, ease in, out. Now, if we did it right, Waybar shouldn't complain. Yeah, it works. Now let's test it and change it to something like 1050 ms. And that doesn't seem to work, of course. No problem, we just take the same thing, paste it to the buttons. Take this, paste it here, and also paste it inside of the active button. Now when you do this, what happens is it basically has no choice but to obey. And obey you it does, because it really is taking a second in order for the animation to show, which we don't want. So if we reduce, we also take this out. Okay, it's a little better. Change it to 550. Okay, there we go. So this workspaces button is what actually controls the animation speed. So if we change in, make it something like 250 or even 200 milliseconds, speed it up further, as you can see, it looks pretty sweet. We can also change the background color for this as well. So we can make it something like, what do we got? So background color, can change it to E8 or just FFF. We can just make it white. If we make it white, this is what we get, right? Now we have to change the color of the text to black. Color be 121212. With that, there you go. But white seems to be too overpowering of a color, so we can pick something like E8 EAED and change the same over here. E8 EAED. Perfect. Now the best theme that would go along with this bar and this bar's config colors and whatnot would be noir, which is purposefully designed to be slick, minimal, and out of the way. And as you can see, this theme switcher really does apply everywhere at the same time, including to my terminal. Now this is what the themes look like as I switch them, but you get the idea. Now let's see what we got. We can increase the border radius for the active button. So border radius would be 100 pixels. That's enough to completely round the button out. Perfect. This is really starting to come together now. And let's see what else we can do. Let's temporarily make the button color, button background red, okay, so that we can see it better. And oh, seems like we have a little bit of scrunched togetherness. Now we don't want that, so we're going to add in a little bit of margin. Top, bottom, we want 0, but then left, right, we want 2 pixels. 2 pixels should be enough. Come on, 2 pixels. Yep, once you do that, looks pretty perfect. And yeah, looks good. Great, that is also just the perfect amount of border radius that you want to have. Okay, looks pretty amazing. Now that's done, let's see what else we could want. We'll shift this back to 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Okay. Then, after we finish this, we can add in a slight bit of a border. Now, it seems like there is a slight border over there, but it probably doesn't help or doesn't make things worse to add a... Oh, that's why. Yeah, we have a border bottom over there. Get rid of that. See if there's border anywhere else. There isn't. So, we'll add in a border. Let's look up border over here. Border. Click this link. Now, let's see here. Okay, so border, medium dashed green. Border, 1px, solid, and green, let's say. If it works, there we go. We have 1 pixel solid green border. You can change green to something like 434343, and that gives it just that slight bit more polished look. It actually looks a little bit like Apple's liquid glass, if you will. That wasn't the look I was going for, but I will gladly take it. I do not mind. Okay, we can also change the border color here. So border, same thing. Just copy this, but then change the border color to be white, E8 EAED. Or we can just change this to 0px, and then call it a day, which also works. Awesome. Now, there's something more that we can do with configuring workspace button colors, which would be to increase transparency by adding in this alpha thing over here and then calling it 0.8, increase slight bit of transparency. Now this really makes it look like Apple's liquid glass, as you can see over here. So if that's a look that you like, you can replicate what I'm doing over here in terms of the background and whatnot. However, if you prefer something else, you can just go ahead and do that. So we've configured that. Next up is the clock. So for the clock, we can just actually just get rid of this. Okay, and this works. We can just have the bare text, now font weight, can say something like 700. Makes sense for the font of this thing to be bolder. Okay, now for the battery, this one 2 is pretty simple. We can, okay, so there's a couple of things that we can do. We can either get pastel colors, as you see in my terminal here. Okay, we can get pastel colors and then fill them up here, or we can just lean hard into the monochrome style and then do that instead. Now, the best thing to do would actually be just picking pastel colors out. So let's do that. Let's go over to config kitty colors, colors.conf, okay, custom monochrome. Seems like that's the color we're using. So monochrome. And here we have a bunch of different pastel colors that we can pick from. Seems pretty amazing. Great. Now for the battery, because it's related to life and whatnot, let's give it the green color. So B7D8AA, B7D8AA. We'll do that, and the color will be 121212. Now if we write and reload, looks pretty good. Great. Now all we have to do is just add in some padding, 0.5px, and then add in some margin, which would be, again, 0.10px, so that we can get a bit more margin, which works. And then add in some border radius. Say it's something like, let's say it's 8 pixels. 8 pixels, not too much. Okay, it also gives us this very pill style thing, which is good. However, let's make it a bit less rounded. 5 pixels. 5 pixels works. Awesome. Then after that, we're dealing with pulse audio, which is volume. So we'll do this. We'll go over to pulse audio. And then now what we'll do is type in basically the same settings we have, but then just change over the color. So, yep. You know what? Instead of doing that, you can just type in pulse audio. So this is a feature in CSS. Now it should have the same styles. However, what you want to do is make sure that, hold on. So pulse audio. I want to change the color. So background color be a different color, something like purple. Yep, purple works. So C3AAD8. C3AAD8. Make that a hex. Okay, great. We have a purple color going on. Awesome. Now we want to remove margin. Now we don't want 10 pixels of margin. Instead, we want 5 pixels of margin. So just put in 5. And there you go. 5 pixels of margin. That is amazing. Okay, now let's see if there's anything else. Lastly, of course, we have network. So we can do the same thing to network. Okay, now all you have to do is just separately configure network. That would be just changing the background color to a different color. Something like, we can pick cyan or teal or whatever this color is called. BDE, or actually pick this AAD8CF. Okay, awesome. Now this is what we have got going on. Pretty simple, pretty good Waybar config that we have. Okay, not bad. It's actually very nice. In terms of pulse audio, let's make sure that our volume and our icons are actually working. Now let's go over to nerdfonts.com. Icons. Then here we'll look for volume. Okay, then here you want to copy volume low, paste that here. Ta-da! Paste it. Paste. Oops. Let's go down. Let's get rid of those two, and then of course paste that icon, and then after volume low, you want volume high. Copy that, and then paste. Reload, and it should be better. However, Kitty is just better at displaying the icons. So we'll go to config, Waybar, config.jsonc. And here we should find the icon and make sure that it works. Let's see what's going on. Okay. Yeah, it should work. However, it seems to be complaining for whatever reason. Well, that's fine. There has to be a reason. Yet again, live troubleshooting. Let's figure this out together. So this is a nerd font we're using, so that's not the issue. Now it could be the issue is probably the font itself. So let's pick a different icon, paste that, medium, and paste that. And we can also take high and then paste that as well. Now what do we get? We still get the same thing. Now there has to be a reason, which is probably the icon itself, right? Let's see. So pulse, audio. You're seeing the live troubleshooting process here. I'm not cutting this out precisely so you can see what I do whenever stuff doesn't exactly go according to plan. Okay. So there you go. Volume percent. So icon seems to be the issue. Let's figure out what exactly is making the icon do this. Now that does not really seem to look like anything, but it looks like a cloud. Now, we don't want a cloud. We do not want a cloud. A cloud is the last thing that we want. So what's going on here? Let's actually get rid of all of this. Okay, oh yeah, got it. So I'm putting on headphones right now, and that's the reason why it's showing this icon. What we actually need is a proper headphone icon, and most likely that's what's going to fix it. So headphone, put that in, still doesn't fix it. This is what happens. It's just trial and error, which means that sometimes I'm going to have to try stuff, and that stuff doesn't work. Now that is no excuse to quit, so we'll do what we do best, which is deal with more trial and error. Great. Now, let's actually open this thing and change the font to JetBrains Mono Nerd font. So we'll do that. Now we can display the icons all of a sudden. It's perfect. Let's see where else the problem lies. Okay, there it is. God, took way too long to figure it out, but once we can finally see the icons, there you go. Our problem is now done. That's it. It took care of itself, as far as we're concerned. Great. Now, is there anything else that we have to do? Apart from increasing the scale so you can see it properly, there is not much else. Config, hyper, modules, monitors. Let's make it easier for you to actually see what's going on. So I'll increase the scale, and ta-da, this is what we got going on. Let me reduce this, quit this, and there you go. That is pretty much all that you can need to create a basic Waybar config. Now, whatever config that I made in front of you, okay, starting with the config.jsonc and then style.css and scripts launch.sh, all of this was created from scratch, right? I didn't rehearse any of this. All I did was just open the wiki, look at a bunch of modules that you and I decided would fit together in this aesthetic, and then all I did was just went out there and then designed it. I designed it right in front of your eyes. So all that to say, it doesn't really take that much effort to write Waybar at all. You can get Waybar looking like this, okay, Apple's liquid glass and everything, just fine, no problemo. And best part is, this kind of design can actually be applied no matter what theme I use. So let's say that I want to maybe not have these colors, okay? I want to not have these colors, and then instead what I want to do is add in this color, but then just give it a slight bit of a border. So here, I don't think it has any color, but I might be wrong. Let's check. Okay, so it very much does have a color. It's just that the color's a bit, wishy-washy. As in, it's dark, so you can't see it. That's no problem. We'll fix that. We'll make sure that we can actually see what's going on. So we'll reduce that. We can reduce the opacity. Great, then after we reduce opacity over there, we just have to do the same thing here. Now if we also put in alpha, this alpha function in CSS is basically just taking whatever color you have over here and then increasing or decreasing transparency. That's it. Now this seems to be a bit too light because you can see through it a bit too much. It doesn't quite give the same glass feel, which means we just have to turn it up a bit more. And if we turn it up, as you can see, it works. We have to add in the border a little bit. Okay. Reduce it a bit more. This is it. This is literally all that you have to do. Just a little bit of tinkering in order to get your bar to look right. And once that's done, you're pretty much free to do whatever else that you could want with your setup. So let's put that border, very same border, and ta-da, there you go. Now, if you wanted, you could also switch the position from a dock to this bottom thing, and then you just have to change margin bottom to margin top. And once you do that, you'd have this. Now there's a reason why it feels like there's too much gap on the top part and not enough gap over here. That's because of the border. If I reduced Hyprland's border size itself, it would make a little bit more of sense. However, all you have to do is just reduce this and then you'll be fine. Reduce the margin top in order to fit, and then you will be fine. Great. All that to say, that's pretty much it. This is how you can create a Waybar config like this one. Now, there's a reason why I didn't choose any specific colors because, one, I genuinely did just hop onto Hyprland's wiki and then show you exactly how to make this Waybar from scratch. So picking out colors is going to be an arduous task that takes a bit of time, especially when you have to get it to match all of these colors, right? Just takes some time in order to get used to it. Not just used to it, but then implementing it, which is why I didn't show you. But if you want to know how to make custom theme switches like this one and have that fit in with Waybar, create Waybar configs like this and whatnot, go ahead and click the first link in the description. I show you exactly how to do this. But yeah, that's pretty much it. If you liked the video, hit like. If you loved it and want to see more like this in your feed, hit subscribe, and I will see you next time. Stay rising.